Good evening, guys. Welcome again to the channel. Just had a nice break. Sadly, back in work again. Such is life. Tonight, we're gonna do my favourite place. No hint of sarcasm whatsoever. Lidl. Honestly, what an absolute pain in the derriere. And I'm going to show you this little junction here as well, coming out of Sandbach Services here. So look at this, how tight it is. See if you can try to see anything coming out of here. So we're looking out of our mirrors. If anybody's watched the last videos on the blind spot, so here if we're trying to get out, we're going to have to try to kink the cab left so we can actually see before we pull out. We have to do this extremely slowly, checking the mirrors. Now this has got a side window on this, as you can see, and then we can pull out. This is one of the most ridiculous exits of any services I think I know. It's not too bad at night time, but in the day it's an absolute pain if people have got no headlights on to see what you're doing. Well, I hope everyone's doing okay. Well, tonight we're going to do something slightly different. Well, still trucking, but I'm going to show you the difference between a 500 brake horsepower 6-cylinder and a 660 V8. Now, we're going to go down to Lidl Luton Regional Distribution Centre. Apparently it's the biggest in the UK and the biggest in the world from what I've read on Google, and I can believe it. It's absolutely massive. I've been there twice before and it's huge. Now, the reason for my dismay of Lidl's, it's got some advantages. Right, let me turn this sat nav off a minute. It's got some advantages and a lot of disadvantages. Now hear me out on this. People that don't drive for a living, not commercial, not drive a truck anyway. Now Lidl, it's cheap for a reason. Don't get me wrong, it's got some good quality products, so does Aldi. Now my gripe with this Deutschland company, no xenophobia whatsoever. Lidl, now it makes you basically, when you pull into Lidl, you might as well become a Lidl employee. Now, I've been in a Lidl down in Belvedere about a couple of months ago, and I made a bit of a joke. I said to one of the fellas we've known over the years going in and out of there, I said, "Hey mate, have you got a Lidl t-shirt so I can be part of a team, because we're practically doing all the jobs for you here?" He looked at me, burst out laughing, and he gave me one. Now when I say gave me one, let me reiterate, he gave me a t-shirt for all you dirty minds out there. So whenever I go to a Lidl now, I put on the t-shirt and they're looking at me, so "You don't work here?" Because, "Are you sure? I'm doing all the bloody work that you lot should be doing." When we get in there, you've got to go to this big computer screen, put in umpteen amounts of information, and then you've got to scan all the paperwork for them that they can't be bothered doing. What they used to do years ago, now we've got to do it. Upon having done all this, you put in your phone number in there, they'll text you a little code you've got to put in. They tell you what bay to go on. Okay, sweet. Okay, I like that technological side of things. And when you get in there, now this is where it irritates me. Bearing in mind, you could have driven, depending what Lidl regional distribution centre it is, you could have driven hours, and I mean hours, to get to these places. Now, A, you're fatigued from the drive. B, you're thinking, God's sake, it's Lidl, you've got to unload it yourself. And I'm not going to use the word tip, I hate that word. A tip, it's got different connotations and it's not unload. The only place that uses tip is in England and Ireland. And it's quite funny when I go to these places where we try to put the translations for the foreign drivers, and they use the word tip as a translation, and it does not make any sort of sense in a translation. So a tip, let's just see. I've got something on the tip of my tongue. Felt tip pen. What else? Here you go, I'll give you a tip. I'll give you a hint. Let's give the waiter a tip. And what's another tip? I tell you what, I'm going to take all my rubbish to the tip. So please, people in England, alright, some people say tip, 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 but I hate it. It irks me beyond belief. Unload is a correct term because nobody else in the rest of Europe understands what the hell you're on about tip. It doesn't make any sense. So just use unload and load, please. One of my gripes. People that know me, I hate that word tip. Tipping, self-tipping. I'm going to tip myself in my bathroom. Anyway, we're actually diverging from the conversation here. Let's turn the alarm off. So yes, when you get to Lidl, now you could have driven hours, you're absolutely exhausted. You get to the place where you're going to unload, depending on how busy it is. Now you've got to plug in, you've got these little electric pallet trucks which you use. Alright, they're electric, so they're going to facilitate your unloading of your trailer. When you get there, any drivers please have gone to any Lidls, tell me if I'm lying. Half of the time the machines have not been plugged in, the batteries quarter full, half full. So you're getting in there, you start to unload your trailer, 5-10 minutes into it the machines start to die. You try to plug one in, there's not enough machines for you to use, so you've got to wait till the other drivers have finished unloading their trailers, put their machines on charge, then you might use theirs for a little bit. So now you're constantly doing musical machines in there, and if you've got a load that is double stacked or treble stacked like we've started doing now, which is an absolute pain in the what's-it, I won't even bother describing. Say now you have to use, it's an electric pallet truck, but it's like a little forklift truck, so the forks, they go up and down to help you take off the pallets that are stacked on top of each other. Now with these machines there's usually one in the whole of the chiller place, one per department. And if somebody else has been using it, say for example if you've got a bloke who's got a double decker with about 60-70 pallets to do, granted he's not going to have to split the full load, but sometimes they also have the double treble stack pallets. Now not only have you got to wait for him to finish, put it on charge, and then you've got to wait for that machine to charge so you can unload your bits, because now the Lidl are telling you, oh no, it's not our job, we even though we've got these massive machines that could take the pallets down quite easily. No, you've got to do this. You've got to take the cling film off in some places. When you've unstacked the pallets, you may then have to re-cling film it to make it safe for health and safety. What else? If for example you've got a broken pallet on the back of your trailer, they're going to expect you, some places now they've got hammer and nails with a bit of common sense, they'll say here you go. Now at this point we become carpenter. So now not only are we driver, we're a warehouse operative, we're a carpenter, and we're an admin assistant with all the paperwork that we've got to do for them. So now they're expecting us to fix a broken pallet with hammer and nails. Now that's the place with common sense. The place without common sense, oh no driver, we can't use a hammer and nails, it's against health and safety. You're going to have to restack this whole pallet that weighs a literal ton. It could take you God knows how long. So forget about your driver's health and safety. So health and safety for me in the trucking industry is an absolute load of old cobblers. There's certain things which I agree with, alright. You know, if it's at night time in a dark yard, alright, you've got to wear the high-vis, sweet. You know, steel toe caps if you're working in a particular industry that requires it. I understand it. Now, health and safety, what about our health and safety? What about when we're tired, instead of resting when we arrive to some of these places? Now, you can go to any place other than LARGEST LIDL that will put you on a bay. Some places, alright, they'll let you stay in your truck, then you can actually get your head down. And how these bays work, they've got like a little traffic light system. When you put yourself on the bay to start unloading, before you start to unload you, it's on green. When they start, the light turns to red, and when they've completed the unload, it turns to green. Nice and easy, so you know when you're finished, no problem. So you're in your cab, you're getting your sleep, you're getting your rest, you feel well rested, no dramas. Then you get some other places. Bearing in mind again, we could have driven through the night, we're knackered now. They'll say to you, hello drivers, let's all get you congregated like sheep in a room where there could be, no exaggeration, 30, 40 drivers. The room is brightly lit. It's got blasting music. And you've got these chairs that don't recline at all. So all these conditions they're definitely not conducive to you getting any form of rest. So now this is my gripe with all these so-called health and safety executives. Where is the drivers health and safety being put into play here? Now we're driving fatigued. Aldi and Lidl, we're having to unload a trailer. You can take anywhere depending on how many pallets you've got. Alright, you might do it in half an hour. Some places double deckers, and I've seen people an hour and a half, 2 hours. Some of our loads could be like an hour 15 if you've got all these stacked, and then if you're waiting for the machines to be charged. So now not only is that eating into your rest when you should be resting, so now you're working, you're grafting. But with a fridge, now you're not working in an ambient temperature. You're actually working in a fridge where it could be 3 degrees, 4 degrees, even colder sometimes, 0. So now our health and safety when it comes to stuff like this goes out the window. But yet 5 years ago, when we had this little bug going around, no drivers, no one's allowed in here, stay in your cab, we'll do this for you, blah blah blah. Now how times have changed, the sheer hypocrisy of it. How are you telling us now where there's a bug which made everyone's life, let's just say, complicated? But then this was the only time, I'd say, as a truck driver, I actually enjoyed driving in the UK. And I can speak to the good majority of the drivers out there that will tell you the same. The roads were a joy, there was no traffic, it was mainly trucks, people that can actually drive and understand the rules of the road. There were the other people, obviously the doctors, nurses, police officers. I'm sure the DVSA, they were deemed as crucial people in this time of need. Anyway, hear the sarcasm yet again. Don't get me wrong, with DVSA, listen, I understand it. They're here to keep the trucking industry safe. I'm only joking, there's a lot of this is said in jest, but don't get me wrong, but there are a few things that grind my gears. But yeah, so the health and safety of the drivers is completely overlooked. Now, I will say this, in Spain and Portugal, they implemented a law which I completely concur with, and it should be implemented over here, where it's absolutely now illegal for the truck driver to load or unload his trailer, and if found to do so, will incur, I think, I don't know if it's changed since, but it was at one point, €4,000 fine to the driver and the company. So that for me is absolutely perfect. And the reason I will say this is because if you do international work, now if you're driving from Poland, from Latvia, Lithuania, Spain, you know, Bulgaria, places that are miles, thousands of kilometers away, and then it could have literally taken you, no word of a lie, you're talking about almost 3 days to get to the UK. Now you have to endure the joys of traffic. You have to endure going to Lidl where you're already absolutely fatigued. You've driven 2,500 kilometers or maybe more, and then to be told, here you go driver, your health and safety doesn't mean jack-ish. We don't care if you're tired, you've driven 3 days to get here. Here's the keys to this machine that you have to plug into an electric socket that maybe could electrocute you, which you never know, it could do, you know. And then you've got to unload your trailer, and then you might even have to wait hours for your paperwork. I'm not joking. Sometimes I've been at some Lidls where you've been waiting 2-3 hours for paperwork if there's any kind of discrepancies with your load. You know, why can't it just be like any other supermarket chains where it's emailed across to the office? But no, the Germans have to do slightly different. Achtung! No, nothing against German people, just the Lidl and Aldi. But yeah, so this is yeah, in all honesty now, but all seriousness aside now, it should be absolutely illegal. I don't care what anybody says. You know, we're actually truck drivers. Some people, you know, may think, oh, you just sit down your ass all day, you know, steering wheel attendant, you're not doing anything, this and that. But again, if there were no truck drivers, the country would probably grind to a halt. I'd give it a couple of days. With everything that you can think of comes on a truck. The majority of the things you can think of gets delivered by truck. So again, if I'm going to become Minister for Transport in the future, we're going to become a dictator. So I did the Minister of Transport on my previous video. I might do a part 2 actually. So part 2 will be, I'm going to just outlaw it for any drivers to do any kind of loading or unloading where you're fatigued. Now I can see there might be a few issues with this one. So the guys that are doing the fuels, the cattle fellas, who else? Anyway, anybody else in the comments, just let me know who else that might be exempt from this non-loading and unloading. Now with the fuel guys, they've got a lovely well, they've got a cushion number, put it this way. A lot of the times they've got a fantastic union that will look after them. Now another thing which I said in this CPC courses, which should be mandatory for any commercial driver, whether it's a truck driver, bus driver, that has to hold a valid CPC card. Now I was asking before, you know, unlike in America where they've got the Teamsters unions that do look after the truck drivers very, very well, they will fight for the corners. Now I know the fuel drivers, they've got a very good union, but I'm talking about the truck drivers in general, where there should be mandatory, whenever, the minute you get your certificate of professional competence card, as part of that fee that you've paid to get that card, that should give you automatic rights to a union, and to make it worthwhile to hold your CPC. So if ever you've got any kind of issues relating to the work, say for example you had to go with a DVSA, or you've got to go in front of a traffic commissioner for any kind of reason, then that CPC will give you free legal representation if you go in front of a traffic commissioner or you have to go to court. Any truck drivers, what do you think? Bus drivers? Because at the moment the CPC card, to me, it's just an absolute waste of time. It's just irrelevant. So if at the end of it, after you receive your CPC, that gives you part of a trucking union, or you know, a coach driving union, for example, you know, like a general union that will look after truckers that are not unionized, like the, you know, petrol and diesel tankers, that will put everybody under the umbrella. If you have an issue, the union will back you 100%. If you've got, again, yeah, like I said before, if you have to go to the traffic commissioner, you have to go to court, you get, as part of your CPC fee, you get that representation from the union to look after its members. Now that for me would actually be worth doing, to make the CPC worthwhile. And I'm sure I've got a few other ideas as well, which I'm going to dethrone a certain Mr. Stasi Starmer for out of number 10. So you could be the first working class truck driver as Prime Minister, dictator. You never know, one must dream big. We must have aspirations of grandeur. But again, we're just a truck driver. We don't know anything. Apparently all truck drivers are thick. There's two thick blanks. Anyway, generalizations aside, but in all honesty, guys, so yeah, I'm in 500 today to show the difference. That's what I was talking about anyway, so I got sidetracked. As you can see, look, Scania's practically the same. Interior, you know, I've got the Amsterdam effect going. I've got no takers, no hitchhikers in here, not allowed, insurance purposes. But yeah, it's exactly the same interior. But what I can tell you is the difference. This is a 6x2 as well, but this feels rather sluggish compared to the V8. It feels very, very heavy on the steering, and also because this one here, it's a mid lift as opposed to a rear lift. My God, to reverse this thing, it is quite heavy, and it's nowhere near as easy to maneuver as the 4x2s or the rear lift. But it's still a nice truck. Like I said, it's you know, I'm not affiliated to any kind of truck. As long as it's clean, you know, inside and outside, it goes okay. The night heater's good. I've got a fridge, freezer, I've got all the accoutrements, I can charge my phone, I'm alright. So we're currently down the M6. This and the M25, oh God, let's just call it as we see it. The M6, the M25, the M1, probably some of the most hated motorways, I would say. And tonight we're quite fortunate. It's on a Saturday night, it's reasonably quiet. Midweek, hit and miss. As Forrest Gump said, life's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. With these bloody motorways here, you never know what you're gonna get. So tonight I'm not gonna curse myself just yet. We're making reasonable progress, and then when we get further down the road towards this Lidl, I might do a little drive around. I doubt it. I don't think they'll let us record inside there because I have some of these places, that's why I can't really record inside. They have a strict no recording policy. Obviously I can respect that. Some people don't want to be on camera. I don't think I would have had someone looking like a Teletubby with a frigging camera on top of his head walking about trying to get me on YouTube. How dare you. But yeah, some places obviously you can't go in. Abattoirs, for obvious reasons, you know, it's a sensitive topic in case we've got vegans or vegetarians out there. But it's you know, animal welfare. But unfortunately, you know, it's farmers' livelihood to keep us fed. Circle of life. So it is unfortunate, but yeah, we can't really record in there. And some of these other places with just, again, health and safety, no recording, even though my eyes work perfectly fine. What else? What's anybody been up to? Having a good weekend? But yeah, I mean, trucking sometimes it can be, you know, it can be a lonely job, and it's not really ideal if you've got things on your mind, you know, if you've got issues at home or, you know, things behind the scenes, you know, it does play on your mind, and it's probably not one of the best jobs to be having such issues when you're driving, because you get a lot of time to think to yourself. You might think it's peace and quiet, but in your head, you know, your head's just thinking about other things sometimes. You know, and it can, you know, I mean, trucking, it's a certain genre of job where you must like your own company, which I do, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy my own company. But sadly, just for the hours that you're starting, the hours you're finishing, and the genuine fatigue that you face, you know, it can cause a lot of problems in relationships where, you know, you can be distant, where people are thinking you're being distant, but you're just genuinely fatigued. You just need that rest. And the work-life balance, sadly, it's not quite adept. It's not, you know, up to speed really. Now, me and my friend always talk about this. Now, most people, if you imagine, you know, you do a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, you do your 40 hours, thinking trucking, you could do that in, oh, here you go, look at BMW there. I'm going to undertake, go back to lane 3 in a minute. Here we go, surprise, surprise. Lane 2, and is he going to go across? No, he's sitting in the lane 2. Still, anyway, people not moving left. Well, yeah, we were saying this, where people do a 9 to 5, 40 hours Monday to Friday. We could do that in 3 days quite easily. Quite easily. You could end up doing 2 15-hour days. Your next one, you can end up doing a 13, a 12, or a 10, or whatever you're doing. So, you know, now it's crazy. In some weeks you could end up doing 2 weeks worth of work hours wise, but most people, you know, literally you could do 2 weeks worth of work. So if you do 40 hours a week, sometimes you can end up doing like an 80-hour week due to no fault of your own, whether it's delays, roadworks, diversions. And it's, trust me, it happens more than most people think, and that's why you do get a lot of burnout in trucking industry. And I wonder whether, you know, you wonder as well, does it cause, you know, do you get a lot of alcoholism, do you get a lot of drug abuse? I don't know, I'm just speculating. But, you know, where sometimes with me, you know, sometimes I struggle to sleep when you're doing days, nights. If you're doing, you know, fridge work especially, you've got to start at odd hours, and it's time sensitive loads. You've got to get it there on time, or it's perishables. You can't let the load perish. As you can understand, it's food, you know, it's expensive as well, so you can't let that go to waste. So it's always, you've got to push to make sure you get it there on time, and it does wreak havoc on your body clock. And I mentioned before, you know, when I first started about 10 years ago, and you know, used to look at some of the drivers, and I was thinking to myself, wow, how? Now I'm 10 years older, 10 years in the game, and you know, I'm more empathetic and sympathetic to the plight of truck drivers. You know, right, let's turn this off. Yes, more empathetic and sympathetic to the plight of truck drivers, not only in the UK, you know, worldwide. I'd probably say it's one of the probably one of the hardest jobs that people that haven't done it don't realise what it entails. Your body clock's wrecked, your sleeping patterns pretty much go out the window. Sometimes if you're not a day driver or you're not doing on-set shifts, your social life's out the window. You can never predict when you're going to finish work, it's impossible. Unlike an office job where you think, right, I'm going to clock in at 9, clock out at 5 or whatever. Here you could clock in to, let's say you start at 4 in the morning. You say, alright love, I'll be back 4 in the afternoon, see you later on, if you're on a day run. Something happens throughout the day, you get held up, you're delayed, you're stuck out overnight, and your missus saying, I thought you was going to make it home. So that causes arguments, you know, and obviously that keeps happening over and over again. There's only so much patience some people have, so you've got to have a very, very forgiving, understanding partner in this job. That's first and foremost. And secondly, you know, with the, I was saying before, with the health issue, it can cause, you know, deep vein thrombosis. It's it sounds a bit rude, but no, it's if you imagine you've been sat down for so long, your blood's not moving for your veins, not moving for your body, so you've got to try to constantly be, you know, moving, whether you're doing exercises when you sat down driving, moving your feet up and down, trying to make sure the blood's going through your body. Because it's like, you know, you get that as well, you get that on a plane if you sat down for 13, 14 hours if you've gone on a long haul flight. So you have, you know, special socks for DVT. Now, what should, but it's never going to happen in an ideal world, the only place that I know of that has a gym for a truck stop is Ashford down in Kent. And that truck stop is predominantly, it's like a European style truck stop where a lot of the guys that come over from overseas, running out of time, they'll park up there. Now that place is fantastic. Come on Mr. Minnie, please move over, thank you. You've got obviously shower facilities, laundry facilities, you've got a gym, you've got, you know, pool table, snooker table, you've got like a little bar, you've got the telly, and I remember, I'm sure you've got sometimes where you can have like a little room you can pay. If you've got like a little hotel kind of rooms as well, you can pay. Now that is what the standard of what a truck stop should be. You know, the services here, you know, they should have a dedicated space for truck drivers only, where you should also be able to have like a little exercise room next to the shower. And I guaranteed if you had something like that, granted not every driver would use it, but I know for one, I'd try to get in there because I don't get enough exercise, and I try to, you know, if I'm parked up somewhere in the UK or even overseas, sometimes if you're, you know, parked up for 24 hours, 45 hours, I make a point of walking, you know, at least 10, 11k, you know, walk a few hours, do some press-ups, do some sit-ups. You know, you try to maintain your health. We're always going on about vehicle checks. Look after your vehicle, it'll look after you. Well, you need to look after yourself to make sure you can look after your vehicle. If you're not looking after your health, you know, it's like akin to you not looking after your truck. So, you know, bear that in mind. If anybody's gonna looking to start to get into trucking, you need to seriously ask yourself, what kind of work you need to do. You can either do some day work, supermarket work if you can get it, perfect. You know, that's nice.